Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. The lock turned once, then twice, and my front door opened. Lily stepped in without knocking and headed straight down the hall. Her shoes scraped fast against the floor like a countdown. I followed, heart pounding because I already knew where. I'm Erin, 29, and I stood in the doorway. She reached for the nursery light and paused when she saw me. I blocked the switch with my forearm and breathed once. "Why are you here?" I asked, voice tight and steady. She brushed past me with a fixed smile that dared me. "Room check," she said, fingers twitching toward the wall. I moved in front of her again and planted my feet. Her gaze slid to my stomach, then back to the empty frame. "Stop touching my things," I kept my hands visible and firm. She reached anyway and tested the rail like it belonged. I stepped closer and the wood creaked between us. She didn't flinch, she only widened her stance. Her phone buzzed and she smirked without reading it. "Truck on Friday," she murmured, eyes still on the rail. "You'll help load, right?" she added with a quick blink. Heat crawled up my neck. Friday felt like a threat. I lifted the rail and angled it into the hallway. She blocked the path with her hip in a small shrug. "Careful," she whispered as if I might drop it. My palms burned. I didn't lower the rail. "Move," I met her stare and didn't blink. She folded her arms and planted her weight hard. The frame pressed my wrist and a hot sting shot up. I kept pushing. She finally shifted half an inch. Footsteps thudded above us, neighbors pausing at the noise. Lily tilted her head and raised her voice on purpose. "See what you're doing," she said with false concern. I dragged the frame back into the room before it snapped. She took quick photos, clicks firing like taps against bone. "Delete them," I said and opened my hand for the phone. She tucked it behind her spine and lifted her chin. "Proof," she whispered, then glanced toward the front door. I closed the nursery door and leaned against it hard. "We talk here," I said, breath shaking but steady. Her lips thinned. She hated closed doors that weren't hers. She tapped the phone screen again and waited for backup. "My key still works," she added with a bright smile. The words hit like a shove. Someone had given permission. I swallowed once and kept my tone even and clear. "Not anymore," I said and reached for the chain. I flipped the chain and held out my palm for the key. She hesitated, then tried slipping past me toward the hall. I stepped in tight and nodded once toward her pocket. "Hand it over," I said and didn't blink. She fished it out slow with a tiny laugh. The metal grazed my fingers and she tried to pull back. I closed my grip and felt her nails dig once. We both let go at the same time, sharp standoff. I slid the key into my back pocket and locked up. Her shoulders rose as if she might lunge for it. "Temporary," I added and pointed toward the entry rug. "Shoes off if you plan to stay civil." She towed them off with theatrical care and stared hard. "I'm not leaving empty-handed," she warned, breath almost a hiss. I opened the nursery door an inch and blocked it. "You leave with nothing today," I answered, pulse drumming. Her phone lit again and she angled it toward me. A new message filled the screen with a short directive. "Bring the cot and the shelves by late afternoon." My throat tightened. This wasn't a bluff anymore. I tapped the screen with my nail and nodded. "Tell him to wait outside," I said without looking away. She typed fast and raised her eyebrows like a dare. "Then unlock or we'll call someone who will." I reached for my own phone and hit record. "This is a home boundary," I said clearly into it. "No consent for removal of property today," I added. Her mouth twitched. She hated cameras more than locks. She rolled her shoulders once and tried a softer angle. "Let me measure the wall for storage," she coaxed. I shook my head and rested a hand on the jamb. No walkthroughs, no scouting, not a single inch. Knuckles rapped twice at the doorstep, heavy and impatient. She brightened like a switch and moved to greet. I stepped ahead and cracked the door with the chain. My brother stared through the gap and kept his jaw set. "Open or we escalate," he said, voice low and flat. I held the recorder near the opening and spoke slowly. "Not today," I answered, keeping my eyes on his. He exhaled hard and glanced over his shoulder for support. Footsteps shuffled on the landing and a neighbor appeared. He frowned at the gathering and looked at my hands. "Noise complaint soon," he muttered, eyes moving between faces. I met his gaze and nodded toward the recorder, witness. My brother rubbed his brow and steadied his tone. We need the room cleared before weekend, he pressed. Not a request, logistics, he added with clipped patience. Lily smiled behind me like the plan already won. I unhooked the chain and stepped in. Oh, the threshold. Back up 3 steps, I told both of them calmly. They shifted, surprised by the order and the stance. I closed the door again and set the deadbolt hard. From the hallway came a sharp whisper and a scrape. They regrouped, low voices, then silence stretched too long. I waited with the phone still recording for proof. A fist struck the wood once, then stilled again. I called the non-emergency line and gave my address. Family dispute over unauthorized entry, I explained evenly. The operator asked if anyone was hurt right now. Not yet, I answered and watched the handle rattle. Lily paced the entry strip and checked her screen twice. She finally typed a long message with quick jabs. Cooperation ends now, she announced with a hard nod. My stomach turned, but my voice stayed level. I reached for a printed notice on the hall table. I slid it under the door toward the landing. Formal no entry warning, I called out through the wood. Further attempts get reported, every single one. The neighbor cleared his throat and murmured, good idea. My brother swore under his breath and stepped away. Lily lingered and whispered through the crack like a curse. We'll come back with help and you won't stop us. I waited until the stairwell quieted, no feet, no whispers. Then I opened the nursery and touched the empty mattress. I lifted it with both hands and carried it to my room. I locked that door too because Friday kept creeping closer. The buzzer startled me 3 minutes later, short and urgent. A polite voice announced building management waiting downstairs. I swallowed and answered that I'd be right there. I grabbed the recorder and pocketed the confiscated key, evidence ready. I hit the lobby and found the property manager waiting. He lifted a clipboard and asked for my version first. I played the recording and pointed upstairs for context. Unauthorized access, I said, and watched his expression tighten. He checked a roster and shook his head once. No approved key release, he noted, then looked toward the elevator. Anyone upstairs right now, he asked with a steady tone. 2 relatives, I answered and kept my shoulders squared. Will involve security, he decided and buzzed the desk guard. A uniformed guard arrived and asked for names and relation. I gave both, then showed the device again for clarity. The guard nodded, evidence enough for immediate action. We rode up together and stopped at my floor. The hallway was silent, but fresh scuff marks trailed left. The guard tilted his head toward my unit and listened. A soft scrape answered metal against wood, patient and slow. He knocked twice and announced building authority with firm volume. Footsteps retreated, then the peephole darkened and cleared. Move back from the threshold, the guard instructed through the door. We waited, no answer, only a faint breath close by. Stand behind me, the guard ordered, hand resting near radio. I stepped aside and kept the camera pointed low. The door opened a crack and Lily's eye glinted through. She stalled when she saw the uniform and the clipboard. This residence is not yours, the manager stated without softening. Leave immediately, the guard added, calm but final. She tried a cautious smile that didn't reach her eyes. Misunderstanding, she offered and angled her body to block. Where is your husband, the guard asked, voice clipped. Her chin lifted toward the stairwell like a signal. He appeared halfway down the hall with tight shoulders. He froze when he saw the badge and the camera. Exit now, the guard repeated, opening his stance for emphasis. My brother stared at the notice taped on my door. Did you file something formal, he asked, voice strangely quiet. Yes, I answered and held his gaze without blinking. Lily's phone chimed again and she finally looked rattled. She typed quickly, cheeks tense, then pocketed it with a shrug. We'll return with paperwork, she announced, trying for steady. The guard extended his hand for the spare key. She hesitated, eyes cutting toward my pocket, then exhaled sharply. Confiscated earlier, I said, and showed the metal on video. The manager took a photo for the building record. Rekeying will happen today, he added with crisp finality. My brother rubbed his temples and measured the hallway quietly. You're escalating over furniture, he muttered without meeting eyes. I lifted the device again and kept my tone even. I'm escalating to keep peace, I answered and looked past him. A door opened 2 units down, our neighbor stepped out slowly. I witnessed earlier noise and attempted entry, he reported. The guard wrote it down and thanked him with a nod. Lily's jaw clenched, her plan now bleeding time. Downstairs, the manager said, motioning toward the elevator doors. We document departures and schedule the lock change. They moved stiff and silent until the elevator arrived. I stayed tea and waited for the next car. Back inside, I called a locksmith and booked an urgent rekey. I sent the building office the timestamped audio for records. A confirmation pinged back with an invoice and a window. Relief brushed me, then my phone lit with a new threat. A message from an unknown number arrived with bold wording. Consent assumed for removal by family representative, it read. A file attachment followed with a typed permission note. At the bottom sat my mother's signature, shaky and unmistakable. My throat tightened, but my hands still moved. I forwarded the note to the manager with a question. Does this override tenant consent? I wrote, keeping the line spare. The reply arrived fast, no authority over your lease. The buzzer rang again, short, then another longer press. I checked the monitor and saw the locksmith's case. Let's do it now, I told him through the intercom. He answered with a quick nod and raised his tools. While he worked, my phone buzzed with a new call. Mom's name flashed across the screen like a dare. I stared at it until the ring almost died. I answered and braced because silence meant nothing good. Let them take what they need, her voice urged softly. I pictured the signature and felt the ground tilt. No, I said, and the word landed like a bar. A pause followed, then a controlled breath, then another appeal. They'll be back with help, Mom warned with weary certainty. Then meet me here with a mediator, I said. Her inhale sharpened like a flinch that never finished. I can try, she offered, and the line went dead. The locksmith clicked the final screw and stepped aside. New cylinders installed, he reported, lifting the old cores. I signed, tipped, and tucked the receipt into my waistband. Down the hall, the elevator dinged, company returned early. The elevator doors slid open and 3 people stepped out. My brother led, Lily behind him, a woman with a clipboard trailing. They walked straight toward my door like a practiced unit. I stood in the frame and braced for impact. Neutral party, the stranger announced while flashing a lanyard. Informal home assessment, she added with a brisk nod. I lifted my phone and started a fresh recording. Entry denied without my consent, I stated, firm and clear. Lily pinned her smile in place and rolled her shoulders. We'll be quick, she promised, hand hovering toward the handle. I angled my body tighter and kept my feet planted. No tour, I answered, pulse steady but high. My brother unfolded a document and held it eye level. Temporary transfer of use, he read with careful emphasis. The signature at the bottom belonged to our mother. I met his stare and felt the hallway shrink. The assessor shifted her weight and asked one question. Is there a dispute over possession of items inside? Yes, I replied and pointed at my locked bedroom. Contents remain with the tenant until a court orders otherwise. Lily scoffed and stepped sideways to peer around me. Give us the infant furniture and we leave, she pressed. I rested my forearm across the jamb and didn't budge. You will leave empty-handed today, I said, holding her eyes. The assessor cleared her throat and addressed the group. This visit stops now without voluntary access, she concluded. Any removal would create liability on all sides, she warned. My brother's mouth tightened. This wasn't the result they wanted. From the stairwell, a familiar voice called my name sharply. Mom appeared, breathing faster than usual, purse gripped tight. She looked at the paperwork, then at my hands. We can solve this inside, she urged, gaze pleading. Outside first, I countered, tilting my head toward the landing. We talk where neighbors can witness, I added for pressure. Mom hesitated, then moved 3 paces back and waited. Lily folded her arms and whispered something to the assessor. Downstairs, the building manager joined us with a pad. No one enters without the tenant's green light, he reminded. Mom's jaw worked, then she offered a new proposal. Store everything in my garage until feelings settle. I waited and shook my head once. Items stay here until I decide otherwise, I answered. The manager wrote a note and underlined it twice. Lily's nails clicked against her phone like a metronome. An unmarked car rolled up and stopped near the curb. 2 officers stepped out and climbed the steps calmly. Dispatch logged a family conflict, the taller one informed. The temperature of the group dropped by a full degree. I repeated the core facts while holding the device. Unauthorized access earlier, demand for belongings now, lock changed. The officer took names, then asked a simple thing. Anyone claim legal ownership of the items in dispute? Silence held for 3 breaths before Lily tried pivoting. Shared family resources, she offered, eyes flashing toward Mom. Mom stared at the ground and did not confirm. The officer marked his pad and lifted one eyebrow. Without a court order, nothing leaves, he concluded evenly. Separate for the day and avoid further contact, he added. My brother looked away and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Lily kicked the step and swallowed whatever came next. The assessor excused herself and headed for the sidewalk. Mom reached for my hand and whispered almost gently. Give them one piece to cool the fire, she begged. I pulled back and kept my voice flat. I will not let grief be looted, I said. The officer nodded once, like that answered everything. He handed me a card with a case number. Call if anyone attempts entry again, he advised. They dispersed slowly, pairings shifting, plans quietly rewiring. My brother paused last and spoke without lifting his head. You're building a wall between us, he muttered, voice thin. I let the silence do the work because guilt is leverage. Back upstairs, I slid the extra lock and set the chain. I moved the boxed items deeper into my bedroom. I wedged a chair against the knob for good measure. Breathing found a rhythm, though my hands wouldn't settle. The buzzer sounded again, short, then long, then insistent. I checked the screen and saw a delivery driver. He held a large plastic bin with my last name. I almost ignored it until the label caught me. I brought it up and cut the tape carefully. Inside lay a pile of borrowed maternity clothes. Beneath them sat a folded note with 3 lines. Return or we'll collect in person by Friday. I packed the clothes back and sealed the bin. I wrote across the top and pushed it aside. No pickup without prior arrangement, do not buzz again. My hand steadied as the marker sank into the plastic. Phone vibration rattled across the counter like a warning. A group message lit up with relatives chiming rapid fire. Words like selfish and irrational filled the screen. Then a new contact joined with a sharper tone. A message from Lily's friend announced a fundraiser. It claimed I promised the nursery to support the baby. Photos from earlier appeared under the headline without context. My face hovered near the frame like an accusation. I screenshotted everything and emailed the building manager. I added the case number and requested a written note. He answered within minutes with an official letter. Any attempt to remove contents will be treated as trespass. Mom called again, voice rougher, resolve fraying at the edges. Shut the fundraiser down before this explodes, she urged. I'll push back publicly if it stays up, I warned. She gulped air and promised to work on it. I carried the nursery rail to the bedroom closet. I slid it behind the luggage and stacked boxes flush. I stood there until my breath softened into something workable. The apartment felt smaller, but the line held. A knock tapped twice at the entry, then nothing. I stayed silent and watched the peephole for movement. A slip of paper slid under the door and stopped. Hearing scheduled tomorrow at noon, family conference, attendance requested. I crouched, read it twice, and stood slowly. This time I would not go in alone. I opened my contacts and dialed the therapist's office. Her voicemail beeped and I left a focused plea. I pushed open the community room and counted chairs fast. Lily sat already with a folded packet and tight jaw. My brother paced behind her like a metronome with nerves. The mediator tapped a tablet and pointed me to a seat. Ground rules, the mediator began with clipped calm. No shouting, one person at a time, phones silent. I slid the building letter across the table toward her. Written notice of trespass, I said, and watched Lily blink. Lily lifted a printout with my face near the frame. Public pledge to donate nursery items, she announced with triumph. I held up my screen with the takedown confirmation. Defamatory fundraiser removed this morning, I answered, steady and cold. My brother rubbed his eyebrow and chose a flatter tone. A moving crew is staged nearby for efficiency today, he admitted. The mediator's eyes sharpened and she wrote a short line. Staged crew implies intent, she noted and looked at me. Call them off, I told him, voice clipped and even. We will not touch anything today, I added, palm open. He hesitated and glanced at Lily for permission that never came. Her smile twitched, then she typed something quick under the table. The mediator set a timer and leaned forward with purpose. Proposal, she said, neutral inventory with photographs conducted later. I nodded once and slid a separate document toward center. Independent storage option available with my lock if needed. Lily reached for the paper and tugged hard. I flattened my hand over it and held. You review after we finish, I told her quietly. She jerked back and the mediator lifted a warning finger. Mom hurried in late and took a shaky breath. She shouldn't climb stairs today, Mom blurted, eyes on Lily. The mediator wrote that down and folded her hands. So no apartment visit, she concluded, sealing the lane. My phone buzzed hard against my knee like a jolt. A text from my neighbor popped up with a photo. Two men stood at my door drilling at the latch. I pushed back my chair and the legs scraped a threat. Pause this, I said, already dialing the non-emergency number. Active attempt at forced entry right now, I reported clearly. The mediator stood and gathered her tablet with a snap. We moved together, she directed, and everyone followed fast. We hit the elevator and silence strained the ride. On my floor the drill whined again, short then longer. The men froze when they saw us in the mediat. Lord. My brother went pale, then tried to look helpful. Stop now, I ordered, holding up the case number card. The taller worker raised a work order like a shield. Authorized by family, he explained, eyes pinging toward my brother. The mediator showed the building letter and kept her voice calm. Footsteps thundered from the stairwell as the officer arrived. He took one look and reached for the drill battery. Hands off the hardware, he warned, and the corridor hushed. He checked IDs while I filmed everything in silence. Unauthorized contractor on premises, the officer concluded, pen scratching. He wrote citations and handed each man a copy. Further attempts bring charges, he added, gaze fixed on them. They retreated to the elevator with shoulders tight and low. Lily's breath stuttered and she grabbed the railing for balance. Mom steadied her with both hands and worried eyes. Ambulance, the officer offered, gently, palm open in question. Lily shook her head and closed her eyes until steady. The mediator reset the group with clipped authority and precision. This escalated today beyond discussion, she said without embellishment. Next steps happen through counsel only, she concluded, chin firm. My brother stared at the floor and swallowed whatever defense remained. I faced him and opened my hand between us. End the fundraiser completely and retract your claims now, I demanded. His thumb moved across his screen in quick bursts. A final post appeared, apology, deletion, correction, then he tucked it away. We're not finished, Lily whispered, voice low and almost feral. Your grief doesn't own the future, she added, eyes burning. It owns my home choices, I answered, standing straighter and taller. The officer shifted closer and the hallway cooled again. They left with the mediator trailing and Mom lingering last. Please consider one small gesture, Mom pleaded, barely above breath. I closed my door and engaged every bolt and bar. Through the peephole, the empty hallway hummed like a warning. I carried the remaining pieces deeper into my bedroom. I installed a door brace and tested it twice for bite. I emailed the officer and requested trespass notices by name. A reply arrived with forms and a tight deadline. An attorney recommended by the manager returned my call quickly. I described the drill, the crew, the prints with my image. She drafted an emergency petition and sent it within the hour. Display a copy on the entry immediately, her email advised. I taped the order to the door and took a photo. I sent it to the family thread with a single sentence. Further attempts will result in arrest, I wrote, then went quiet. 3 dots hovered, then disappeared, then hovered again. Another text dinged from an unknown number with a photo. Through my living room window, someone had photographed the nursery wall. A caption sat below it like a dare and a trap. We know which room and we know you're alone. I locked the bedroom and dialed the officer's number. Threat by text with a photo, I reported, voice steady. He asked for the image and the unknown contact. Stay inside and wait for a patrol, he advised, clipped. I forwarded the screenshot and dragged a dresser against the window. I slid the nursery box deeper under the bed. My neighbor texted that he was in the hall. Knock twice if you need me, he wrote, ready. The buzzer rattled one long press, then silence. I checked the monitor and saw no one visible. A second later, a hand covered the lens and held. I hit record and called the dispatcher again, urgent. Footsteps scraped the fire escape with careful patience. Metal pinged like a small bell after a misstep. I grabbed the door brace and braced the frame hard. The sound paused, then resumed slow and deliberate, closer. Police en route, the dispatcher confirmed through the speaker. Stay off the line unless entry occurs, she added. I set the phone down and squared my shoulders. The window latch ticked once, then twice, then stilled. A shadow crossed the glass and hovered at the edge. I flicked on the hallway light and counted breaths. The shadow retreated and another knock tapped the door. Delivery for Aaron, a man called, voice too bright. Leave it at the curb, I answered without moving. Paper rustled, then a whisper cut under the threshold. Wrong floor, another voice hissed, low and angry. Boots shifted, and then a key scraped the old hole. The new cylinder blocked the attempt and clicked solid. I slid the protective order under the door again. Court order posted, I announced, loud enough for neighbors. Footsteps retreated 2 paces, then regrouped near the stairs. My neighbor knocked twice and spoke through the peephole. I'm recording from the landing, he said, calm and near. I exhaled once and kept the brace in place. Down the hallway, an elevator dinged, timing perfect, doors opening. 2 officers turned the corner with practiced focus. Hands where we can see them, one commanded immediately. I opened the door to the chain and watched. 2 men lifted their palms while glancing at each other. Who requested delivery? The taller officer asked, chin raised. Family property pickup, one offered, eyes flicking toward my unit. The officer thumbed his radio and confirmed the call. I stepped back as the chain slid free under training. They positioned both men against the wall and frisked quickly. One phone hit the floor and lit with messages. The officer scooped it and scrolled with measured care. A thread showed the fundraiser link and the photo angle. Who sent the picture? He asked, voice flat and firm. The worker shrugged and bit his lip, silence as shield. The officer tapped the screen and held it up. A contact name flashed, it belonged to Lily. My stomach dropped, but my jaw locked in place. The officer asked for permission to seize the devices. Approved, I answered, and he nodded to his partner. They bagged the phones and wrote times on the labels. The elevator opened again and my brother stepped out. He froze at the sight and lifted both hands. I told them to stop, he blurted, eyes frantic. The officer moved him aside and separated the group. Lily arrived seconds later with Mom pulling on her. Leave. She saw the bags, then the screenshot on the device. Her mouth opened, then closed. Calculation replaced the bravado. She reached for Mom and pulled her closer like a shield. Come inside and talk now, she tried, voice honeyed. Not a chance, I answered, keeping the threshold between us. The officer faced Lily and spoke without decoration. Did you authorize this visit or send surveillance images? She looked at my brother for a lifeline and found none. Mom's shoulders sagged as the silence dragged too long. The officer wrote on his pad and waited her out. I forwarded a photo, she admitted, barely louder than breath. Turn around, he instructed, tone unforgiving and official. He didn't cuff her, he stepped her aside for statements. Potential harassment and conspiracy to commit unlawful entry, he noted. Her jaw clenched and she fought tears that weren't for me. Mom reached toward me with trembling fingers and stopped. I wanted everyone safe, she whispered, already breaking. Safety means no ambushes, I replied, eyes still on Lily. The officer nodded once, agreement without sympathy, procedure ruling the moment. My neighbor gave his clip to the officer's email. He added timestamps and stood like a quiet wall. The worker muttered apologies while staring at his boots. The hallway felt very small and very loud, nevertheless controlled. Here's the plan, the officer announced, voice clipped and final. Temporary protective order will extend through the weekend. No contact unless counsel present, he continued, glancing at me. Everyone nodded because there was nowhere else to look. They escorted the workers to the elevator and left. My brother lingered, hands empty, eyes red without tears. I kept thinking the room was just stuff, he murmured. I let that hang and waited for something real. I'll pay your legal fees, he offered, throat tight. I'll handle the public posts and tell the truth. I studied him until the words felt anchored and clear. Start with her friend list, I said and held out my phone. We deleted the fundraiser copies together one by one. He typed a statement and tagged every share. It read like accountability, not spin, and finally stopped buzzing. He handed my device back and stared at the floor. Lily watched from a distance with Mom hovering close. I want to go home, Lily muttered, voice drained and small. Mom nodded and guided her toward the stairs carefully. At the corner, Lily looked back, no apology, only heat. The corridor emptied and my neighbor gave a small salute. Text me if anyone returns, he said, steady as ever. I thanked him and closed the door with deliberate calm. The lock slid shut like a well-timed drumbeat. I carried the last rail into the closet and paused. I ran a hand along the edge and breath slow. Not a shrine, not a promise, not anyone else's plan. Just a line held and a room that waits on me. My attorney called while I was still standing there. Judge approved the extension, she reported without ceremony. Drop copies at the precinct tomorrow, she added, efficient. Then rest, she finished as if rest were a task. I taped another notice beside the first and took photos. I sent them to the thread with 2 spare lines. Orders extended, entering ends tonight. No one responded, which was its own answer. I turned off the hall light and sat on the floor. A car door slammed outside and the building settled again. My phone buzzed once more, unknown number, no preview. I opened it and saw 3 words that finally eased something. We're done trying,